Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows. When I say the words The Tonight Show to you, what do you think? Whom do you think about? Well, probably Johnny Carson or now Jay Leno. Before Johnny Carson, there was the acerbic comedian Jack Paar. And before Jack Paar, the original Tonight Show was something very different and exciting. It was hosted by the genuine Renaissance man, Steve Allen, our guest this week on American Montage. I caught up with Steve Allen in his modest little offices in North Hollywood, technically Van Nuys, California. We sat down to talk for about an hour, and I'm going to share that interview with you. We'll be talking about Steve's career, about his love of music, and family values. But first, I wanted to go back 50 years to a time right after the Second World War, when things were quickly changing in this country.
Well, I was moving out of radio into television, which actually turned out to be a very easy transition, considering the two kinds of work I would eventually do in television, that being hosting talk shows, although as always as a comedian, and secondly doing primetime comedy sketch shows. The radio training was invaluable, and that applies not only to my own experience, but just to talk for a moment about the talk show field. There was the earlier generation of the talk show hosts, Johnny Carson, Jack Paar, myself, a few others, and we were all, again, radio trained. It's not that we went into radio to prepare for television. Television hadn't even been invented when most of us got into radio, but it just turned out to have that happy result. Whereas most of the talk show people now, the Letterman generation, have had no experience whatever in radio. They come out of comedy clubs, and I don't think that's nearly as good preparation. First of all, they are surprisingly inarticulate, depending on what one means by the term articulate. It's remarkable how rarely you hear an actual coherent English sentence these days on television in general, but particularly the ad-lib portions. So there was that difference. But there were some negatives, too, to the transition from radio to TV. In radio, as you know, as a practitioner of it, silence is the background canvas on which sounds are painted, so to speak. And they had big signs in radio studios, quiet, please, shh, words to that general effect. Whereas nobody's ever bothered much about that in the settings. And it was quite a shock for those of us who did comedy in radio, where we had the advantage of the early experience in totally quiet surroundings. The only sound you would hear outside of your own remarks was the happy laughter of audiences, and there was that generally respectful attitude as regards just extraneous noise. Well, that changed abruptly as soon as we moved into television and began working in theaters with studio audiences. There were all kinds of distractions, none of which existed in radio. At any moment, the comedian or star, whoever it was, would be speaking, competing with him for the attention of the studio audience. Might be 12 chorus girls over to the left of the stage about to prepare for a dance number, 3 men pushing big pieces of machinery around on stage, 2 or 3 cameras, 1 or 2 microphone dollies, those big rubber-wheeled carts that they lug microphones on, that are kept out of sight, of course, and announcers standing in the wings, laughing at or not. There's an awful lot going on, and finally, of course, we all adjusted to that, and now comedians can succeed despite those problems, but it did initially come as a shock.
We were talking about his early days in television, the start of the talk show, and I asked him, of all the people who have ever done TV talk, which he thinks has been the best.
Merv Griffin was possibly the best interviewer of the well-known talk show hosts on TV, and I think his secret, if you want to call it that, was very simple. He listened to you. He also worked in close physical proximity to you. He had more fun, I think, doing his show after he got rid of the traditional desk. And he worked with the same prepared list of questions that all television staffs provide all TV talk show hosts. They find out what the guest wants to plug, his new movie, his record album, his new marriage, whatever it might be he wants to talk about. And they break that information up into 5 or 6 questions, and then they give those type list of questions, as you know, to Jay Leno or David Letterman or Donald Duck or whoever they're working for. And but of all the people who've ever used those, I think Merv used them the least. And all he was doing was something that men have been doing or women have been doing for a million years. You just listen to the answers to your first few questions, and after that it's just like two guys having a conversation on a bus.
When you left radio and went into television, did you see the camera as something that was easy to talk to? I mean, starting in radio, of course, radio, by its very essence, even with an audience, I think would feel more automatically one-to-one. But was it difficult to get past the audience into the camera?
No, it wasn't for me. First of all, I had an easy period before I was full-time employed in TV. I had been on it as a guest or an occasional participant in a number of instances in the late 1940s. So when I finally did it full-time, it wasn't suddenly jumping into cold water for the first time. I already felt comfortable with it. And then, too, I never have worked very differently on TV. I'm just me anyway. I'm the only comedian in show business who does not have an act. I just find out how long I'm supposed to amuse or entertain, whatever. And I fill in my hour or my 90 minutes, and the people are nice enough to laugh, and they pay me, and I go home. So my style was just accidentally well-suited for the casual kind of television. There are other kinds of TV, as you know, that are not casual, that are prepared, written, and they're often excellent, too. But the easygoing approach was natural to me. I wasn't, however, the first to have to put it to use. There were two fellows before me, we actually overlap, but they got started earlier than I did, who never hosted a talk show, but nevertheless paved the way for the talk show style. I refer to Arthur Godfrey and Dave Garroway. Young people today don't know their names. In fact, many young people today don't know the names of Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Aquinas, for that matter. But nevertheless, they were very important in the 1950s. In fact, Godfrey was more important than anybody ever has been since on television. He was in your eyes and in your ears morning, noon, and night. At one time, he had 3 shows in the top 10, and either one or two of those shows were seen on television and at the same time heard on radio.
Steve Allen is the product of radio, having started there first, and I asked him when he was growing up, what stations or announcers or programs did he listen to late at night?
Well, if you're talking about radio, when I was a kid, I used to listen to the great music that was then commonly available, literally 7 days a week on the radio. One of the reasons that our country is in such cultural and general social trouble, which is agreed to by every single thoughtful person, whether of the political right or the left, all races, all religions, all colors, every political and philosophical camp agrees that we're in a hell of a lot of trouble right now. And nothing that bad, nothing that serious could be occasioned by just one cause or just 2 or 3 causes. There are literally dozens of causative factors on the list accounting for our present sorry predicament. And one of them is the almost total collapse of musical taste. Now, no one who's, let's say, 22 years old wants to hear this. They think, oh, there's an old man talking about the fact that he prefers his music. No, you're missing the point if that is your reaction. And in fact, none of you may be guilty of so stupid a reaction, so forgive me for thinking you might be. To put the matter very concisely, Rhapsody in Blue is really better than Switchblade Baby, I'm Gonna Stab You Tonight. The music of the Golden Age, and it's rightly called a Golden Age, was created by the greatest composers and greatest lyricists of the century. And one happy gleam in the surrounding darkness is that today's young songwriters concede that. They don't think they're better than Ira Gershwin or Cole Porter or Irving Berlin or Johnny Mercer at writing lyrics. They say, oh, no, man, we're not that good. We're working at it. But those men were giants, and we respect them.
Steve, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. And check YouTube for more American Montage programs.